It is an ordinary summer night when it all begins. The oppressive heat of the day has finally given way to the cool embrace of evening, but the air remains thick with humidity. Shadows stretch and contort as the sun dips below the horizon, casting a menacing aura over the otherwise serene neighborhood. As the evening falls, Alex and Sarah stand in their kitchen, finishing up the remnants of dinner. The hum of the refrigerator and the clinking of dishes are the only sounds breaking the stillness. Their 10-year-old son Danny is upstairs, already tucked into bed, his small nightlight casting a gentle glow in his room. "Do you hear that?" Sarah asks suddenly, her voice tinged with unease. Alex looks up from the sink, his brow furrowed. "Hear what?" Sarah pauses, her head tilted slightly as she listens intently. It sounds like whispering, coming from outside. Alex turns off the faucet and strains his ears. For a moment there is nothing but the usual night sounds. Then, faintly, he hears it too, a barely audible murmur, like hushed voices carried on the breeze. "It's probably just the wind," he says, trying to sound reassuring. But Sarah's face remains tense, her eyes darting towards the back door. Wind doesn't sound like that, she whispers, her voice barely louder than the mysterious noise outside. "I'm going to check on Danny." As Sarah heads upstairs, Alex walks to the back door, peering out into the growing darkness. The shadows in the backyard seem to shift and move, as if alive. He shakes his head, telling himself it's just his imagination. But the whispering continues, growing slightly louder, more insistent. Suddenly, a loud crash echoes from upstairs, followed by Sarah's scream. Alex's heart leaps into his throat as he bolts up the stairs, taking them two at a time. He bursts into Danny's room, finding Sarah standing in the middle of the room, her face pale and eyes wide with terror. "What's wrong?" Alex demands, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of danger. Sarah points a trembling finger towards the closet. "It opened by itself," she stammers. "And I saw something moving inside." Alex walks cautiously towards the closet, his heart pounding. He reaches out and slowly pulls the door open. The closet is empty, save for Danny's clothes and a few toys. But something feels off. An unnatural coldness emanates from within, chilling him to the bone. "There's nothing here," he says, trying to keep his voice steady. "It must have been a draft or something." Sarah shakes her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I know what I saw, Alex. There was something in there." Danny stirs in his bed, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" he asks sleepily. "Nothing, buddy," Alex says, forcing a smile. "Just a little misunderstanding. Go back to sleep." As Danny settles back into his pillow, Alex and Sarah exchange worried glances. They both know something strange is happening, but neither wants to admit it out loud. Later that night, Alex lies in bed, staring at the ceiling. Sarah is beside him, her breathing slow and even, but he knows she's not asleep. The whispering has stopped, but the sense of unease lingers, making it impossible to relax. Suddenly, the temperature in the room drops sharply and Alex feels a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. He sits up, looking around the darkened room. The shadows seem to move again, shifting and swirling in the corners. "Sarah, wake up," he whispers urgently, shaking her shoulder. She stirs, her eyes fluttering open. "Do you feel that?" Sarah sits up, hugging herself against the cold. "What is happening?" she whispers, her voice trembling. Before Alex can respond, the whispering returns, louder and more distinct. It's coming from everywhere and nowhere at once, filling the room with an eerie, malevolent presence. "We need to get out of here," Alex says, his voice tight with fear. "Now." They scramble out of bed, rushing to Danny's room. He is already awake, sitting up in bed with wide, frightened eyes. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" "We're leaving," Sarah says, trying to keep her voice calm. "We need to go." As they hurry down the stairs, the whispering follows them, growing louder and more insistent. The shadows seem to reach out, clawing at them as they make their way to the front door. But when Alex tries to open it, the door won't budge. It's as if an invisible force is holding it shut. Panic sets in as he struggles with the handle, his heart racing. "Alex, what's wrong?" Sarah asks, her voice high-pitched with fear. And the door. "It's stuck," he gasps, pulling with all his might. "I can't open it." Sarah looks around frantically, her eyes wide with terror. "We have to get out of here. Try the back door." They race through the house, the whispering growing deafening now, filling their ears and minds with a cacophony of voices. The shadows twist and writhe, seeming to take on forms, reaching out with dark, grasping fingers. Reaching the back door, Alex grabs the handle and pulls. To his relief, it opens easily. They burst out into the night, the whispering following them, echoing in their minds. They run across the yard, not daring to look back. The night is eerily silent now, the oppressive feeling lifting slightly as they put distance between themselves and the house. "Where do we go?" Sarah asks, her voice shaking. "We can't stay here." Alex looks around, trying to think. "The car. We can go to my brother's place. It's not far." They make their way to the car, the whispering still faintly audible in the distance. As they drive away, Alex glances in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something chasing them. But the road behind them is empty, the house growing smaller in the distance. The sense of dread begins to fade, replaced by a grim determination. They have to find out what is happening and why their home has become a place of terror. As they drive, the whispering fades completely, leaving only the sound of the engine and their own breathing. But the memory of those voices and the shifting shadows will haunt them for a long time to come. The car's tires crunch on the gravel driveway as Alex, Sarah, and Danny pull up to a modest two-story house. The porch light flickers, casting an eerie glow on the front yard. Alex's brother Mark lives here with his wife Emily and their teenage daughter Lisa. As they step out of the car, the front door opens and Mark steps out, a look of surprise and concern on his face. "Alex, what are you doing here so late?" Mark asks, his voice tinged with worry. We had to leave the house," Alex stammers. "Something's happening, something strange. We needed to get away." Mark's expression shifts from concern to confusion. "What do you mean? What happened?" Sarah steps forward, her face pale and eyes wide. "There were voices, Mark, whispering, shadows moving. We couldn't stay there." Mark glances back at Emily, who has come to stand beside him, her eyes filled with apprehension. "Come inside," he says finally. "Let's talk about this." Once inside, they gather in the living room. The familiar, cozy surroundings contrast sharply with the fear and tension hanging in the air. Danny clings to Sarah, his eyes darting around nervously. Lisa, standing in the doorway, watches them with a mix of curiosity and unease. "Start from the beginning," Mark says, leaning forward. "Tell us everything." Alex and Sarah take turns recounting the events of the evening, the whispering voices, the moving shadows, the sudden cold. As they speak, the atmosphere in the room grows heavier, the horror of their experience settling over everyone. "That sounds unbelievable," Emily says, shaking her head. "But I can see you're genuinely terrified." "It was real," Alex insists. "I don't know what it was, but it was real." Mark rubs his chin thoughtfully. "Do you think it could be? I don't know, some kind of prank? Maybe some kids messing around?" Sarah shakes her head vehemently. "No, Mark. This was no prank. It felt evil." Lisa, who has been silent until now, steps forward. "I heard stories about things like this," she says quietly. "About spirits or entities that haunt places. Maybe that's what it is." Emily gives her daughter a worried look. "Lisa, this isn't the time for ghost stories." "She's right," Alex says. "It felt like something supernatural." Mark stands up, pacing the room. "All right, tomorrow we'll go back to your house and check things out. Maybe there's some explanation. For now, you all should get some rest." Despite their exhaustion, sleep doesn't come easily. The whispering and shadows linger in their minds, making every creak and rustle seem menacing. In the guest room, Alex and Sarah lie awake, holding each other tightly. Danny, nestled between them, occasionally murmurs in his sleep, his small body tense. In the morning, the unease still hangs over them, but there's a determination in their eyes. They need answers. Over breakfast, they make a plan. Mark and Alex will go to the house, while Sarah and Emily stay behind with the children. As they drive back, Alex's stomach churns with anxiety. The house looms ahead, its once welcoming facade now filled with foreboding. They park in the driveway, the silence around them almost deafening. "Ready?" Mark asks, his voice steady but eyes betraying his own fear. Alex nods, and they step out of the car. As they approach the front door, Alex hesitates, his hand hovering over the handle. Taking a deep breath, he opens it, and they step inside. The house is silent, but the oppressive atmosphere is palpable. The shadows seem to cling to the corners, darker and more menacing than before. They move cautiously through the rooms, checking for any sign of what might have caused the previous night's terror. In the living room, Mark spots something. "Look at this," he says, pointing to a spot on the floor. It's a small, dark stain, barely noticeable but unmistakably blood. "That wasn't here before," Alex says, his voice barely above a whisper. They continue their search, moving upstairs. In Danny's room, the closet door stands ajar, and the unnatural coldness from the previous night has returned. Mark pulls out a flashlight, shining it into the depths of the closet. "There's nothing here," he says, but the doubt in his voice is clear. They move to the master bedroom, where the air feels thick and stifling. The bed is untouched, but a faint whispering starts again, sending chills down their spines. "We need to leave," Alex says urgently. "There's something here, Mark, something we can't see." As they turn to go, the whispering grows louder, more insistent. The shadows on the wall seem to stretch and reach towards them. Mark grips Alex's arm. "We can't just run every time something happens. We need to understand what's going on." Just then, a loud crash comes from downstairs, followed by a scream. They rush down, finding the front door wide open and Emily standing in the hallway, her face ashen. "Sarah and Danny are gone," she cries. "They were here and then. The door flew open and they just disappeared." Panic sets in as they search the house frantically. The whispering is now a cacophony, the shadows swirling violently around them. In the chaos, Alex finds a note on the kitchen table. The handwriting is shaky and unfamiliar. "They're mine now. Come to the park if you ever want to see them again." Mark grabs Alex, pulling him towards the door. "We have to go. Now." They race to the park, the whispering voices following them like a sinister echo. As they reach the entrance, the air grows colder, and the shadows seem to converge, blocking their path. Standing at the edge of the park, they see a figure in the distance, holding Sarah and Danny. The figure is shrouded in darkness, its features obscured. As they move closer, the figure raises a hand, and the whispering stops abruptly. "You shouldn't have come," a voice says, low and menacing. "Now, you will pay the price." Before they can react, the figure disappears, leaving Sarah and Danny behind, unconscious but unharmed. The shadows recede, and the park returns to its normal, peaceful state. Alex and Mark rush to their family, relief flooding through them. But the sense of foreboding remains, and they know this is far from over. As they carry Sarah and Danny back to the car, Alex glances back at the park, a cold determination in his eyes. They need to find out who or what is behind this, and stop it before it's too late. The ride back to Mark's house is tense and silent. Sarah and Danny, though now conscious, remain in a state of shock, their eyes wide with lingering fear. Alex grips the steering wheel tightly, his mind racing with thoughts of the sinister figure and the note's ominous message. Once they arrive, Emily rushes out to meet them, her face etched with worry. "Are they okay?" she asks, helping Sarah and Danny out of the car. "We're fine," Sarah says, her voice trembling. But it was so dark. Inside, they gather in the living room. The atmosphere is thick with fear and uncertainty. Lisa sits beside her mother, her eyes darting between the adults. "We need to figure out what's happening," Alex says, breaking the silence. "This isn't just about ghosts or spirits. There's something more going on." "Did you see the figure?" Mark asks, leaning forward. "Who was it?" "I don't know," Alex replies, shaking his head. "But they left a note saying Sarah and Danny were theirs, and to come to the park if we ever wanted to see them again." Emily gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. "What do they want?" "That's what we need to find out," Alex says grimly. "We can't just wait for something else to happen. We need to take action." "But how?" Sarah asks, her voice filled with desperation. "We don't even know who they are or what they want." "I have an idea," Lisa says suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. All eyes turn to her. "There's an old woman in town, Mrs. Henderson. People say she knows about these things. Maybe she can help." "That's a long shot," Mark says, but Alex nods. "It's worth a try," he says. "Anything is better than doing nothing." The next morning, they head to Mrs. Henderson's house. It's a small, dilapidated cottage on the outskirts of town, surrounded by overgrown weeds and gnarled trees. As they approach, the door creaks open, and an elderly woman with piercing blue eyes steps out. "I've been expecting you," she says, her voice strong despite her age. "Come in." Inside, the house is cluttered with strange artifacts and old books. Mrs. Henderson motions for them to sit at a worn wooden table. "Tell me what has happened," she says, fixing them with a steely gaze. They recount the events, from the whispering voices to the figure in the park. Mrs. Henderson listens intently, her expression unreadable. "This is not just a haunting," she says finally. "You are dealing with a malevolent entity, something ancient and powerful." "What does it want?" Alex asks, his voice trembling. "It feeds on fear and despair," Mrs. Henderson explains. "It will try to break you, to turn you against each other. You must stay strong and united." "How do we stop it?" Sarah asks, her eyes pleading. Mrs. Henderson stands and walks over to a dusty bookshelf. She pulls out a thick, leather-bound book and hands it to Alex. "This book contains the knowledge you need, but be warned, it will not be easy. You must perform a ritual to banish the entity. It will fight back with all its might." "Thank you," Alex says, clutching the book tightly. "We'll do whatever it takes." As they leave the cottage, a sense of determination fills them. They now have a plan, a way to fight back. But the journey ahead is fraught with danger, and the entity will not go down without a fight. Back at Mark's house, they gather in the living room and open the book. The pages are filled with ancient symbols and instructions for the ritual. As they read, a feeling of dread settles over them. "We need to perform the ritual at the park," Alex says, his voice steady. "That's where the entity seems to be strongest." "What do we need?" Mark asks, scanning the pages. "Salt, candles, and an item of great personal significance to each of us," Alex replies. "And we need to do it at midnight." That night, they gather the necessary items and prepare for the ritual. The tension is palpable as they drive to the park, the darkness pressing in around them. As they reach the park entrance, the air grows colder, and the shadows seem to move with a life of their own. They set up a circle of salt in the center of the park, placing candles at each point. Alex takes a deep breath and steps into the circle, holding a locket that belonged to his mother. "Are you ready?" he asks, looking at each of them. Sarah nods, holding a bracelet given to her by her grandmother. Mark grips a pocket watch that belonged to their father, and Emily clutches a small stuffed bear, a childhood keepsake. Lisa stands at the edge of the circle, her face pale but resolute. "I'll keep watch," she says. "Make sure nothing interrupts the ritual." They begin the chant, their voices mingling in the still night air. The candles flicker, and the shadows outside the circle writhe and twist. As they continue, the whispering starts again, louder and more insistent. "Stay focused, Mrs." Henderson's voice echoes in Alex's mind. "Do not let it break your concentration." The air grows colder, and the ground beneath them trembles. The shadows close in, reaching out with dark, grasping fingers. Alex feels a surge of fear but pushes it down, focusing on the chant. Suddenly, a figure materializes outside the circle. It's the same dark figure from the park, its features obscured by shadows. It raises a hand, and the whispering stops. "You think you can banish me?" it hisses, its voice dripping with malice. "You are fools. I am eternal." "We will stop you," Alex says, his voice strong. "You have no power over us." The figure laughs, a sound that sends chills down their spines. "You have already lost," it says. "Your fear and despair feed me. You cannot win." The ground shakes violently, and the candles flicker, threatening to go out. But they continue the chant, their voices growing louder and more determined. The figure recoils, its form flickering. "Keep going," Sarah shouts, her voice filled with determination. The air crackles with energy, and the figure screams in rage. The shadows writhe and twist, but the circle holds strong. With a final desperate scream, the figure dissipates, the shadows retreating into the darkness. The ground stops shaking, and the air grows still. The candles burn steadily, their light banishing the last remnants of the darkness. "We did it," Alex says, his voice filled with relief. But as they leave the park, a sense of unease lingers. They have won this battle, but the war is far from over. The entity may be banished, but its presence still looms, a dark shadow over their lives. As they drive back to Mark's house, the air is filled with a tense silence. They know they have only just begun to uncover the true nature of the entity and its connection to their family. The road ahead is uncertain, but they are determined to face whatever comes next together. The days following the ritual are filled with an uneasy calm. Alex, Sarah, and the others return to their normal routines, but the memory of the entity's malevolent presence lingers. Every creak and shadow seems ominous, a reminder that their battle may not be over. One evening, as Alex is putting Danny to bed, he hears a faint whispering. His heart skips a beat, but he forces a smile for his son. "Danny, how about a bedtime story?" Alex suggests, trying to keep his voice steady. Danny nods, his eyes wide with excitement. "Yeah, Dad. Tell me about the brave knights again." Alex begins the story, but his mind is elsewhere. The whispering grows louder, almost taunting. He finishes the story quickly and kisses Danny goodnight, promising to check on him later. Downstairs, Sarah is talking to Mark and Emily, who have come over for dinner. Lisa sits in the corner, scrolling through her phone. Alex joins them, his face pale and tense. "Did you hear that?" he asks, his voice low. Sarah's face falls. "The whispering?" "Yes, I heard it too." Mark stands up, his expression grim. "We need to figure out what's going on. This isn't over." Suddenly, the lights flicker, and the room plunges into darkness. The whispering intensifies, filling the air with a sense of dread. Alex grabs a flashlight from a nearby drawer and switches it on, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Stay together," he says, his voice firm. "We need to find out what's happening." They move cautiously through the house, the whispering following them like a sinister echo. As they reach the living room, the temperature drops sharply, and the shadows seem to shift and move on their own. "Where's Danny?" Sarah whispers, panic rising in her voice. "I put him to bed," Alex replies, his heart pounding. "He should be upstairs." They rush to Danny's room, but the bed is empty. The window is open, the curtains fluttering in the cold breeze. Alex's heart sinks as he sees a small figure standing outside in the yard. "Danny," he shouts, running to the window. But as he looks closer, he realizes it's not Danny. It's a shadowy figure, similar to the one they banished at the park. The figure raises a hand, and the whispering stops abruptly. "You thought you could defeat me," the figure hisses. "I am part of you. I always have been." "What do you mean?" Alex demands, stepping out into the yard. The others follow, their faces pale with fear. The figure laughs, a sound that sends chills down their spines. "You are all bound to me. The fear, the despair, it comes from you." Suddenly, memories flood Alex's mind, arguments, secrets and lies. He sees flashes of his childhood, moments of fear and sadness that he had long buried. The entity feeds on these emotions, growing stronger with each memory. "You can't break free," the figure continues. "I am eternal, and I am within you." "No," Alex says, his voice trembling but determined. "We can break free. We will face our fears and overcome them." The figure recoils, its form flickering. The shadows writhe and twist, but the family's resolve grows stronger. They join hands, forming a circle, and begin to chant, their voices filled with determination. The air crackles with energy, and the figure screams in rage. The shadows close in, but the circle holds strong. With a final desperate scream, the figure dissipates, the shadows retreating into the darkness. As the night returns to normal, the family stands together, their hands still clasped. The air is filled with a sense of relief, but also a lingering unease. "Is it over?" Sarah asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex nods, his face grim. "For now, but we need to stay vigilant. The entity may be gone, but its influence can always return." They return to the house, the atmosphere lighter but still tinged with tension. As they sit in the living room, they begin to talk, sharing their fears and secrets. The process is painful, but necessary. They need to confront their past and heal as a family. Days turn into weeks, and the sense of normalcy slowly returns. The whispering and shadows are gone, replaced by a newfound sense of unity. But the memory of the entity's presence remains, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk within. One evening, as they sit together, a knock comes at the door. Alex opens it to find Mrs. Henderson standing there, her eyes sharp and knowing. "I came to check on you," she says, stepping inside. "I felt a shift in the energy. You did well." "Thank you," Alex says, his voice filled with gratitude. "But we couldn't have done it without you." Mrs. Henderson nods, a small smile playing on her lips. "Remember, the real battle is within. Stay strong and united, and you can overcome anything." As she leaves, the family stands together, their bond stronger than ever. They know the road ahead will not be easy, but they are ready to face it together. That night, as they prepare for bed, Alex hears a faint whispering. His heart skips a beat, but he takes a deep breath and listens closely. The whispering is different now, calm, almost soothing. It's a reminder that they have faced their fears and emerged stronger. As he lies down beside Sarah, he feels a sense of peace. They have confronted the darkness within and found the light. The journey has been difficult, but it has brought them closer together. In the end, the true enemy was not the entity, but the fear and despair that it fed on. By facing their fears and supporting each other, they have banished the darkness and found a way forward. As they drift off to sleep, the whispering fades, replaced by the gentle sounds of the night. The shadows are just shadows now, and the family is ready to face whatever comes next, together.